Jimin finally spoke the truth about Jungkook. Fans were. "You weren't supposed to see that," Jimin whispered, his voice cracking under the fluorescent lights of the backstage corridor, his trembling hand still smeared with blood. The screen had gone dark for just 3 seconds during the live broadcast, but it was enough. Enough for fans around the world to catch a glimpse of something they were never meant to see. Jungkook's haunted expression as he stared into Jimin's eyes, and Jimin's panic as he mouthed words that weren't part of the script. Words that, by morning, would become the most searched phrase on the internet. "You killed him, didn't you?" The performance had ended in thunderous applause, smoke cannons, and pyrotechnics, but the atmosphere backstage was thick with something else. Fear. Not stage jitters or post-show adrenaline, but raw, palpable fear that clung to the walls like mist. Jimin's breath caught in his throat as he locked the dressing room door behind him. He stared at his reflection in the mirror, trying to make sense of what he'd just done. He hadn't meant to say it aloud. But Jungkook had looked at him like he already knew. Outside, the staff were yelling. Someone had fainted, security had been called, and Namjoon was demanding everyone put away their phones. Taehyung was nowhere to be found. The broadcast had reached 98 million viewers before it cut, and now, Jimin was at the center of a firestorm he'd barely survived starting. He leaned against the cold wall, his body sliding slowly down until he was sitting on the tiled floor, knees pulled to his chest. The scent of burnt confetti and leftover foundation clung to him. His phone buzzed. Once, twice, 20 times. Notifications from Weverse, Twitter, and private numbers flooded in. Headlines had already begun spreading like wildfire. BTS's Jimin accuses Jungkook of murder, caught live on air. Conspiracy or confession. Fans decode the broadcast incident. The fall of K-pop's untouchable duo. Jimin didn't open the messages. Instead, he opened his photo gallery. There, buried between pictures of ramen, fan art, and selfies, was a video file. Unsent. Unwatched since the day it was recorded 2 years ago. He tapped it. The screen flickered. A younger Jungkook stared back at him, eyes glassy, voice shaking. "If anything ever happens to me, don't trust them. Don't trust any of them, not even Taehyung, especially not Taehyung." Jimin paused it. The silence screamed. For the last 2 years, he had buried this memory deep inside him. Buried it beneath contracts, encore performances, and carefully crafted interviews. But when the blood showed up again, this time not metaphorical but real, it shattered the dam he'd built inside his mind. It had started with the anniversary tour. During rehearsals, strange things began to happen. Footsteps when no one was around. Stage lights malfunctioning in patterns that resembled Morse code. Jungkook's cryptic post that read, "Forgive me, Haeyoung," then got deleted minutes later. Jimin had been trying to ignore it all, but last night, everything changed. Jin had returned unexpectedly from the military. Or at least, that's what everyone thought. But Jimin had seen the tremor in Jungkook's hands when he embraced Jin. That wasn't just surprise, that was guilt. Now, with the whole world demanding answers, Jimin sat alone, knowing that the truth, his truth, would either damn them all or finally set someone free. The dressing room door creaked open. Jungkook stepped in, his black hoodie dripping from the rain outside, eyes unreadable. "You really said it," Jungkook murmured. "I had to," Jimin said, voice low. A beat of silence stretched between them. The air pulsed. "You have no idea what you've done." "I do," Jimin said. "I finally stopped lying." And with that, the silence broke, not with another word, but with a siren in the distance and the soft vibration of Jimin's phone buzzing with a single message from an unknown number. They know. The world had asked for the truth. Now it would have to survive it. "You think you know everything, don't you?" Jungkook hissed, slamming the door shut behind him. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the confined dressing room. His eyes, usually soft and boyish, were wild, dilated and darker than Jimin remembered. "You don't know a damn thing." Jimin stood slowly, his hands still slightly trembling but his gaze steady. "Then tell me. For once in your life, tell me what really happened that night." The silence between them stretched long enough to suffocate. Rain lashed against the windows. From the hallway, muted footsteps passed. For a second, it felt like they were the only two people left in the world, two shadows suspended in a room filled with ghosts. Jungkook's lips parted like he wanted to scream, but no sound came out. "I saw you," Jimin continued, voice quieter now, like he was afraid the walls would listen. "In the hallway, the night Jin disappeared. You were holding something in your hands, it looked like." "Don't," Jungkook cut in, eyes burning. "Don't say it. You think this is about Jin. This goes way deeper than him." "Then explain it to me," Jimin shouted, the edge of his voice cracking. "Explain why you left that video. Explain why you've been spiraling for 2 years, pretending everything's fine while we're all drowning in your silence." Jungkook ran his hands through his damp hair, packing in a tight circle. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." "Try me." He stopped packing, looked Jimin dead in the eyes. "There's a room beneath HYBE," Jungkook said finally, the words slow and heavy. "No cameras, no staff access. Only a biometric lock that opens for one person. It's been there since before we debuted. I didn't believe it either until they took me there." Jimin frowned. "Who's they?" Jungkook hesitated. "I think," he licked his lips, lowering his voice to a whisper, "I think it's the reason Hosok left early. The reason Yoongi started getting paranoid. They told us it was a burnout, but he said he heard screaming, every night, coming from below the practice rooms." Jimin felt a chill spread across his spine. "That's impossible," he said, half to himself. "We've all been in and out of that building for years. There's nothing there." "Because they never let us near the south wing," Jungkook muttered. "Not unless they want us to see something, or forget something." Jimin's eyes widened. "Are you saying they did something to you?" "I don't remember everything," Jungkook said, and now his voice cracked, not from anger but from something deeper. "But I know I woke up with blood under my fingernails. I know they made me watch someone, over and over. I know Jin was trying to protect me, and then he vanished." Jimin sat back down, knees weak. "You should have told me." "I couldn't." Jungkook's voice dropped, filled with something like shame. "They said if I told anyone, you would be next." The lights flickered overhead. Suddenly, a knock at the door. Jungkook's entire body tensed. He motioned for silence, placing his ear against the door. Another knock, louder this time, more insistent. A voice followed, calm, too calm. "Jimin SSI, it's Manager Kang. We need you to come with us. HYBE wants to debrief you on the broadcast." Jimin looked at Jungkook, then at the door. "He's early," he whispered. "They weren't supposed to contact me until tomorrow." Jungkook shook his head. "That's not Kang." "What?" "That's not his voice." The knock turned into pounding. "Open the door now." Before Jimin could react, Jungkook grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the back of the dressing room. There, behind a row of unused costumes, was a vent, barely large enough for a grown man, but just enough if you didn't think about the claustrophobia. "We don't have time," Jungkook said. "They'll break through." "We can't both fit." "You first," Jungkook snapped. Jimin hesitated, but the doorknob behind them began to rattle violently. He crawled in, breath shallow, the cold metal scraping against his skin. Jungkook followed seconds later, pulling the vent shut behind them just as the dressing room door exploded open. Through the narrow slits, Jimin saw two men walk in. Not staff, not anyone he recognized. One of them wore an earpiece. The other had a tablet in hand, scanning for signals. "They were here," the one with the tablet said. "Signal shows movement until 10 seconds ago." "Secure the hallway," the other replied. "And scrub the footage, no leaks." Jimin's blood turned to ice. He clamped a hand over his mouth, heart pounding. They weren't just in trouble. They were being hunted. 10 minutes later, the men left. Jungkook waited, then pushed open the vent on the other side, pulling them into a narrow maintenance hallway deep in the bowels of the building. It smelled like oil and metal and secrets. "Where does this lead?" Jimin asked, wiping sweat from his brow. "To the south wing," Jungkook said. "You said we weren't supposed to go there." Jungkook looked at him. That's exactly why we have to. They ran in silence, adrenaline drowning out exhaustion, until they reached a locked door with no sign, no lights, and no keypad. Jungkook pressed his thumb against a hidden panel. The lock clicked. The door opened with a hiss of air. Inside was darkness. A cold, humming darkness that smelled like old photographs and antiseptic. And in the center of the room, under a single spotlight, was something Jimin never expected to see again. A chair, stained red, and Jin's dog tag, resting silently on the floor. The chair was bolted to the floor, rusted steel, leather straps dangling from the arms, stains old, dark, and irrefutable, spread like ink beneath it. Jimin stood frozen in the doorway, unable to speak, unable to breathe. Jungkook walked in first, not like someone exploring, but like someone returning. "You've been here before," Jimin said, voice barely above a whisper. Jungkook didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the dog tag. He crouched down and picked it up with shaking hands. "This was around his neck the last time I saw him." Jimin stepped inside, the sound of his footsteps swallowed by the heavy silence. Why would it be here? If he was taken, if something happened to him, why leave this behind? "Because they want us to know," Jungkook replied. "They're not hiding anymore, they're playing." Suddenly, the lights snapped on, flickering tubes overhead that bathed the room in a cold, sterile glow. And with the light came something worse, the sound of a recording device whirring to life. A speaker embedded in the wall crackled. And then Jin's voice filled the room. "Don't believe what they tell you. If you're hearing this, they've already erased me." Jimin's knees gave way and he collapsed into the wall, the air rushing out of his lungs. "Jungkook, if you're still you need to get out. Don't bring them here. Don't let them open the door. They'll use you just like they used me." The message ended as abruptly as it began. Jungkook stared at the speaker. They didn't erase him, they just stored him. "What does that mean?" Jimin asked, his voice hoarse. "They broke him, turned him into a warning. They want to see how long it'll take before we break too." Jimin shook his head. "This can't be real. None of this isn't some damn movie." "You saw those men," Jungkook said. "You saw how quickly they moved, how they tracked us. You think this is new? This has been going on for years, Jimin, since the beginning." Jimin clutched his arms around himself. "We signed up to be idols, not this." "They never cared about the music," Jungkook muttered. "They cared about control, influence, experiments. We were the perfect test group. Isolate 7 boys, break them, reshape them." "Stop," Jimin said, eyes watering. "Don't say that." "It's the truth. I saw the files. There's a folder with our names. Psychological profiles, triggers, weaknesses. They cataloged every breakdown, every injury, every lie we told the press." Jimin's mind reeled. "What are you talking about? How could you?" "There was a girl," Jungkook interrupted. "She worked in archives. She tried to help me. I think they made her disappear too." Jimin's stomach churned. "What was her name?" Jungkook hesitated. "Seol." Jimin's breath hitched. "I remember her," he said. "She was the one who used to leave extra drinks in the fridge. Quiet, always kept her head down." "She left me a key," Jungkook continued. "To the vault, to this room. She said this place was the core of everything, that if we could get here, we'd understand what we really are." Jimin turned away. "I don't want to understand. I just want this to stop." "You think I do?" Jungkook snapped. "You think I wanted any of this? I wake up every night hearing screams in languages I don't speak. I see faces in the crowd that aren't really there. I haven't been able to sleep without pills for over a year." Jimin spun around. "Then why drag me into it?" "Because you were already in it," Jungkook said, his voice breaking. "The minute you spoke on that stage, you crossed a line. They'll come for you now, just like they came for Jin, for Yoongi, for Seol." Jimin looked down at the dog tag. He ran his thumb across the engraved name. "So what do we do?" "We finish what Jin started." A monitor lit up on the far wall. A security feed. Black and white footage began to roll, a live view from the rehearsal room above them. On screen, Taehyung stood alone in the center of the stage, looking up toward the rafters, his expression unreadable. He raised a hand, and then he spoke. "I know you're watching," Taehyung said calmly, directly to the camera. "I warned you not to go into the south wing." Jimin's heart stopped. "He knows," Jungkook whispered. Taehyung smiled faintly on the screen. "You always were the most predictable, Jimin." Then the feed cut to static. The room plunged back into silence. "We have to leave," Jimin said, moving toward the door. But the door had already shut, sealed from the outside. Jungkook was staring at the camera in the corner of the room, his expression hardening. "We were never alone, were we?" The speaker clicked on again. This time, a new voice. Soft, feminine, clinical. "Subjects 3 and 5 have reached phase 4. Emotional breakdown verified. Initiating protocol ES." "What the hell is protocol ES?" Jimin asked, chest tightening. Jungkook turned toward the chair. "I think we're about to find out." From above them, vents opened with a hiss. Gas. A sweet, synthetic scent flooded the room, like perfume laced with something rotten. Jimin stumbled back, coughing, eyes watering. "Stay low," Jungkook shouted, dragging him to the floor. "Don't breathe deep, cover your mouth." Jimin's vision blurred. His heart thundered. And in his ears, like a memory dredged from the bottom of a nightmare, came Jin's voice again. "Don't let them make you forget." Then everything went black. Jimin gasped as consciousness returned in violent fragments. His lungs burned. The air was thick with decay and static, as if his body had been unplugged from the world and shoved into a corrupted simulation. His fingers twitched against the freezing floor, sticky with moisture and the metallic tang of blood. His head pounded, each beat a thunderclap of confusion. Then came the voice. "I thought you last longer." "Taehyung." Jimin's eyes snapped open. The room had changed. No longer the stark, cold chamber with the bolted chair. It was darker now, lined with screens, cables snaking across the walls like veins. One screen flickered with security footage, rooms he didn't recognize. Others showed performances, rehearsals, interviews, all of them laced with odd, split-second glitches, frames that didn't match, smiles held a little too long, eyes that blinked in reverse. Across the room, seated calmly on a sleek metal table, was Taehyung. His silhouette was lit from behind, turning him into a shadow cut against the static glow. He held a cigarette between two fingers, unlit. Jimin tried to speak, but his throat was raw, like he'd been screaming for hours. "You were right about the gas," Taehyung said, as if continuing a casual conversation. "It doesn't kill, not anymore. They fixed that after the last incident." Jimin forced himself up onto his elbows. His limbs trembled violently. Jungkook lay beside him, unmoving but breathing, his chest rising shallowly. What did you do to us?" Jimin croaked. Taehyung tilted his head. "Me, I warned you. I told you both to stop digging, but you never could listen, could you? Always the hero, always the heart." "Where are we?" Jimin managed. "The Forgotten Wing," Taehyung replied. "Below the south chambers. Not even the CEO has clearance here." Jimin's heartbeat stuttered. Why are you doing this?" Taehyung stood and walked toward him, each step echoing. "You think I wanted any of this? You think I enjoyed watching our family disintegrate while pretending everything was fine on camera?" He crouched beside Jimin, lowering his voice to a whisper laced with venom. "I begged them to let me protect you, but you made it impossible. You kept pushing. You brought attention. You were going to destroy everything we had left." "You're one of them now," Jimin said, recoiling. Taehyung's smile didn't reach his eyes. "No, I'm not one of them. I'm something worse. I'm the one who survived long enough to understand the rules." Behind him, a new screen lit up. Footage played of Seol, clear, high definition. She was speaking to someone off camera, eyes full of urgency. "They've chosen Jimin for the ES trials," she said. "They think his empathy can be weaponized. I have to get him out before." The footage cut to black. Jimin stared at the screen, heart sinking. Why her? She was trying to help. She got too close, Taehyung murmured. She broke the script. I loved her, Jimin whispered. Did you know that? Taehyung looked away. I did, he said quietly. And you let them take her. I had to, Taehyung snapped, the first crack in his calm exterior. Do you think it didn't break me? Do you think I slept after that? Every night I hear her voice in the vents. But it was her or you. They made me choose. Jimin stared at him in disbelief. That's not a choice. That's surrender. Call it whatever you want, Taehyung said, standing again. But I've kept you alive longer than anyone else. Jungkook stirred then, groaning as he rolled over. Taehyung turned his gaze toward him. And he was always the variable, the wild card. They couldn't predict him, couldn't control him. Jimin crawled to Jungkook, lifting his head gently. He's not your enemy. No, Taehyung said coldly. But he's the reason this all started. Don't you see it yet? Jimin shook his head, trying to stay lucid. Started how? Taehyung walked to a terminal and tapped in a code. A file opened on the screen. Project EOS, Phase 0. And there, listed under Subject 0, was a name. Jeon Jungkook. Jimin's breath caught. He was the first, Taehyung said. Before even debut, recruited without knowing. His mother signed the waiver. HYB didn't just train him, they rewired him. No, Jimin said, his voice cracking. He's been breaking down for years, but not because of guilt, because the programming failed, because the part of him that's real is clawing its way out. Jungkook opened his eyes slowly, groggy and bloodshot. What's happening? Jimin helped him sit up. They used you. Jungkook blinked, trying to process. What does that mean? It means, Taehyung said, lighting the cigarette finally, that everything you remember, every blackout, every nightmare, every shadow that felt too close, wasn't trauma. He exhaled. It was activation. Jungkook froze. No, that's not possible. I'd know, I'd remember. They don't let you, Taehyung replied. That's the entire point. Jimin turned to him. Then why are you telling us this now? Because I'm tired, Taehyung whispered. Tired of watching you suffer, tired of pretending, and because I don't think I'll make it out this time either. He handed Jimin a flash drive. This has everything. The real footage, the files, the protocols. It's not just about you. It's not just about us. They've started new trials, new recruits, teenagers, fans, they're scaling up. Then help us stop them, Jimin said. Taehyung laughed, bitter and broken. You think anyone will believe 3 broken idols? They'll erase us faster than a trending scandal. We don't need them to believe us, Jungkook said, finally rising to his feet. His voice was steady now, clear. We just need the truth to exist. Taehyung stared at him for a long moment. Then he nodded. A distant alarm blared. Too late, Taehyung said. They're here. What about you? Jimin asked. Taehyung shook his head. I'll buy you time. But go, he said, stepping between them and the only exit. Don't let this cycle continue. Jimin hesitated only a second longer, then grabbed Jungkook and ran. Behind them, the last thing they heard before the door slammed shut was Taehyung's voice, soft, resolute, almost like a lullaby. I remember her too. Gunshots followed. Then silence. The hallway smelled like fire and sterilized death. Flashing red lights painted the walls in rhythmic pulses, each one throwing Jungkook's and Jimin's shadows in distorted, monstrous shapes. Sirens wailed through the underground complex, rising in pitch, falling, then rising again like a predator gasping with hunger. Their footsteps pounded against the steel floor, echoing off the walls in an uneven rhythm, Jimin half dragging Jungkook, who was still dazed, his legs threatening to give out every few steps. Hold on, Jimin grunted. We're almost. The ceiling above them exploded. A rain of concrete and sparks. The concussive blast hurled them both against the wall. Jimin's vision swam as white dust clouded the air. Pain flared through his ribs, sharp and immediate, but he didn't stop. He forced himself to his feet, coughing, eyes burning. Jungkook was groaning beside him, blood trickling from his temple. Then came the sound boots, many fast, organized. "Go left," Jimin shouted, not thinking, just moving. They ran, zigzagging through narrow corridors lit by flickering emergency lights. Behind them, voices barked orders, cold, inhuman voices amplified by comms. Jimin recognized one of them, Manager Kang. Only now his voice was sterile, devoid of all the warmth he used to fake on set. "Subject and Subject 3 are loose. Do not engage lethally. We need full cognitive capture. No external damage." Jimin's stomach turned. Not people, not idols, subjects. They burst into a stairwell, nearly slipping on the slick metal steps. Jimin slammed the door behind them and bolted it, buying only seconds. He yanked Jungkook up by the collar. "You with me?" Jungkook nodded weakly. I'm awake." They took the stairs 3 at a time, each floor bringing new sounds, more guards, more surveillance systems rebooting. Above them, the access door to the ground floor beckoned like salvation. But Jimin had one destination in mind. The archive room. Seol once mentioned it in whispers, always after glancing over her shoulder. A room that didn't exist on any schematic. A digital vault buried between sublevels, used for storage of sensitive experimental data, raw, unfiltered, and unapproved. It was where HYBE kept its sins. "Third sublevel," Jimin said between breaths. "If we reach it, we get the proof. We finish this." Jungkook didn't respond. "Are you listening?" Jungkook stopped. Jimin turned. Jungkook was staring at the wall. A panel had shifted, mechanically, like it had recognized him. A new passage opened. "Jimin," Jungkook whispered, "I think it's calling me." Jimin grabbed his arm. "That's what they want. That's how they keep you lost in this place. We stick to the plan, we." But Jungkook stepped through the opening. Jimin cursed and followed, the wall ceiling shut behind them. Inside, the temperature dropped instantly. Screens covered every surface, walls, floors, even the ceiling. Each one played clips, footage of rehearsals, interviews, V-Live sessions, fan meetings. But something was wrong. Jimin watched one video, himself and Jungkook on stage, laughing. Only, his eyes weren't blinking, and Jungkook's smile froze for 3 full seconds, too still to be real. The footage glitched. And in the frozen frame, a figure stood behind them, unmoving, faceless, like a shadow stitched into the pixels. "What is this?" Jimin whispered. Jungkook was already at the center of the room, where a chair, sleek and silver, waited like a throne. "I've seen this before," Jungkook said, touching its armrest. "In my dreams." "No," Jimin said, stepping forward. "Get away from it." But Jungkook sat. Immediately, the screens shifted. Files opened, names, dates, logs. Project EOS, observation logs, subject 0. Start date, 2012. Phase 1, emotional modulation successful. Phase 2, memory segmentation stable. Phase 3, unscripted reactions during performances, acceptable risk. Phase 4, instability increasing. Subject exhibiting deviation. Initiate endgame protocol. Jimin's knees nearly buckled. "You were never just an idol," he said, tears in his eyes. "They built you." Jungkook turned toward him. His face was pale, sweat glistening on his forehead. "Then who am I, Jimin?" "You're more than this," Jimin said, rushing to him. "You're not what they made. You're who you chose to become. All those years on stage with us, that was real. But if I'm a weapon, then let's aim you at the people who built the damn war." Suddenly, alarms screamed louder. The walls lit up with infrared figures closing in. Red silhouettes, armed. Jimin looked at the console, a blinking option. Upload 2 global servers, initiate. He hit the command, without hesitation. No more hiding. Progress bar, 1%, 10%. A voice echoed through the room, booming, male, familiar. CEO Bang's voice. "Jimin, Jungkook, stop this now and you walk away alive." No deal, Jimin muttered. Bang's voice hardened. You don't understand what you're destroying. This isn't just about you. This is about Korea's global image, our nation's influence. You are state property now. Jungkook rose from the chair, fists clenched. Then let them watch it burn. 50%, 70%. The door blew open. Armed guards flooded in. Jimin and Jungkook raised their hands slowly. Too late, Jimin said, as the file hit 100%. A surge of white light blasted from the monitors as the system self-destructed. Data broadcasted, mirrors triggered, the truth now scattered across digital veins worldwide. The guards froze. Orders lost, control severed. Jungkook turned to Jimin. You really think they'll let us go? No, Jimin said. But we're not theirs anymore. Outside, the sky above HYB's headquarters shimmered with dozens of drones. Broadcasts were already live. The headlines were coming. And this time, the world would believe. Because the cameras had finally blinked. And in that tiny, fleeting moment, the truth got out. The footage was everywhere. Jimin's face, Jungkook's voice, Taehyung's warning, Seal's broken whisper. It had spread like blood through water, across news outlets, K-pop forums, encrypted darknet channels, even national broadcasts that tried in vain to shut it down. The algorithm had collapsed under the weight of the truth. HYBE's digital defenses crumbled. Someone, some rogue insider or perhaps the system itself, had replicated the file again and again, making it impossible to erase. And at the center of the storm, Jimin and Jungkook were ghosts. Hidden in the underbelly of the city. The hideout was an abandoned studio in Itaewon, once used by producers before BTS even existed. Now it was hollow, filled with dust and discarded dreams. Rain rattled against the glass ceiling. It was the only place they could think of that wouldn't be on a grid. Jimin sat with his back against the piano, legs stretched out, watching the reflection of city lights blur in the puddles. His body ached. His soul felt scorched. Jungkook paced near the window, his hoodie pulled low, dark circles under his eyes. He hadn't slept since the upload. They're calling us traitors, he said suddenly, his voice low. The headlines are spinning it like we were brainwashed, delusional, dangerous. Jimin didn't respond. Jungkook turned to him. Do you think we did the right thing? Jimin lifted his head slowly. If you have to ask that now, then maybe it was never about being right. Jungkook looked away. There was silence for a long time. Then Jimin stood, walking to the old upright piano. He lifted the cover, touched a single key. The note was off, slightly warped, but the echo still held warmth. Do you remember the first time we wrote a song together? He asked. Jungkook nodded. You cried because the chorus reminded you of your mom. Jimin smiled faintly. Yeah, I said I wanted the world to feel something real, not something designed. You got your wish, Jungkook said. It just came wrapped in blood. They fell quiet again. Until the door burst open. Jimin spun, heart pounding, but it wasn't a soldier. It was Namjoon. Soaked in rain, eyes wild, breathing hard. Behind him, Yoongi. Alive. Barely. Jimin ran forward. Yoongi. He's fine, Namjoon said, guiding the older man in. But we don't have much time. Jungkook stared. You were. Missing, Yoongi croaked. Yeah, that's what they wanted everyone to believe, but I've been in hiding, collecting pieces, listening, waiting for a moment like this. Jimin helped him sit. Why didn't you tell us? Because if I had, they would have killed you too, Yoongi said, then looked at Jungkook. Especially you. Jungkook blinked. I don't understand. Everyone keeps saying that. Why me? Yoongi reached into his coat and pulled out a drive. Because you weren't just the first subject. You were the key, the neural framework they built the others on, the template. Namjoon began typing furiously into a nearby laptop, using the hideout's last working satellite uplink. They created a psychological map of you, your instincts, your reactions, your attachments, and then they used it to manipulate the rest of us. You were the reference. Jungkook stumbled back, breath catching in his throat. No, no, that can't be true. I was just... You were a child, Yoongi interrupted gently. It wasn't your fault. But it happened because of me. Namjoon looked up. It started with you, but it can end with you. Jimin stepped forward. We've already sent out the truth. Isn't that enough? No, Namjoon said. That was just the matchstick. The real fire is here. He turned the screen. It showed a live feed of a HYBE press conference. Men in suits, lawyers, manufactured concern. Allegations regarding unauthorized experiments are not only false, but defamatory, one of them was saying. We are cooperating with authorities to apprehend the individuals responsible for this digital terrorism. Namjoon muted it. They've already spun the narrative. They're pushing it onto us, saying we faked everything. Deepfakes, AI edits, mental breakdowns. Jungkook scoffed, and the public will believe it because it's easier than facing the truth. Yoongi pulled something else from his coat, a small, sleek device with a blinking red light. What's that? Jimin asked. Proof, Yoongi said. The original server logs, the biometric data, the experiments on fans, the civilian trials, everything. They can deny videos, but they can't deny signatures, contracts, DNA. Namjoon's fingers flew across the keys. We broadcast this, there's no walking it back. No comeback tour, no redemption arc. We become symbols, we lose who we were. I think, Jimin said softly, we already lost that version of us. Jungkook looked around the room, at the worn posters of their debut era still hanging crookedly on the walls. He reached up, touched one. The version of himself smiling back was so young, so untouched by all of this. He turned back to the others. Then, let's give them something real to remember us by. Yoongi handed the device to Namjoon. The upload began. Outside, the city shimmered with artificial peace. Inside, the revolution hummed. And for the first time in a long time, Jimin didn't feel afraid. He felt alive, bruised, betrayed, hunted, but finally, painfully himself. The music in the building was long dead. But in the silence that followed, something else was rising. Truth. And it was louder than anything they'd ever sung. The upload bar ticked toward completion with the gravity of a final heartbeat, slow, unstoppable, irreversible. 68%, 79%, 93%. Each number brought a tighter coil of tension around their chests. Jimin watched it like it might explode. Jungkook stood with arms crossed, jaw tight, the storm outside reflecting in his eyes. Namjoon didn't speak. His fingers hovered over the keyboard like a conductor readying the final note of a requiem. Yoongi leaned against the far wall, pale, bleeding at the lip, but still alive, still stubborn. It was Yoongi who broke the silence first. When this hits 100%, there's no going back. Jimin turned toward him. We've been past the point of return for a long time. Yoongi gave a soft, knowing smirk. I just needed to hear you say it. The screen blinked once. Upload complete. Jungkook stepped forward. It's done. Namjoon nodded. Every server, every mirror, every international outlet we could root through, and we put it in the hands of journalists that still have souls. Do those still exist? Jimin muttered. We'll find out soon enough, Namjoon said. A sudden sound cut through the moment, helicopter blades in the distance. Faint, but growing. Jungkook's shoulders tensed. Jimin moved instinctively toward the window, eyes scanning the sky. Floodlights swept across the buildings like searchlights in a war zone. They found us, Jungkook said, barely above a whisper. Yoongi reached into his jacket and slid a small device onto the table. A single red button sat in the center. What's that? Jimin asked. Insurance, Yoongi replied. It wipes everything in this building, erases our path, shuts the signal trail down. Namjoon frowned. And us. Yoongi's silence was the answer. Jungkook stepped forward. No, no more running, we face them. They'll shoot us on sight, Namjoon said. Then let them, Jungkook said. I want them to look me in the eye. I want them to see what they tried to bury. Jimin closed his eyes, feeling the weight of it all. Their past, their choices, the betrayal, the broken bonds, the blood on their hands, the songs that meant something once but had become masks. He walked over to the dusty piano, wiped off the keys, sat down, and started playing. A simple melody. The first melody they ever created together. The notes echoed off the concrete, soft and imperfect. Yoongi smiled. Jungkook turned toward the window, toward the storm. Namjoon sat beside Jimin, his voice quiet. You know what this sounds like? A goodbye. No, Namjoon said. A beginning. The door below shattered. Boots hit metal. Orders were shouted. They were coming. Jimin didn't stop playing. The lights flickered. A spotlight landed on the glass ceiling. And in that moment, as the soldiers burst into the studio with weapons raised, the music was the only thing that mattered. Not the fear, not the history, not the lies. Just the sound of 7 souls that had once dreamed together. And though only 4 stood now, and though the world might never know the whole story, what was real pulsed in every note. The world would remember them, not as pawns, not as products, not even as idols, but as voices that refused to stay silent. Jungkook raised his hand slowly, unafraid. Jimin struck the final chord. A moment of silence followed. Then came the flash. White. Blinding. And then, peace. The kind that doesn't come from justice, but from choosing the truth. Even when it costs you everything.